Hello and welcome to episode 10 of Super Deep Movie Analysis. I'm Lec Zorn along with guest co-host Michelle Gussow. And in our last episode we completed our preview of the upcoming Rocky movie Creed by reviewing Rocky Balboa. Later in the near future we're going to do a supplemental episode on the two trailers now for the Creed movie. But this episode, we're going to do something a little bit different, and we're going to do an episode on a movie that you've probably never seen. If you have, we'll be extremely pleasantly surprised and happy. But it's a short movie from 2011 called Soldier Song that was written and co-directed by Michelle, and that included acting from both Michelle and me. And you know, we are risking the appearance of self-promotion, but you know, and I don't intend to as a regular practice include films that I've been involved with, but you know, I am making an exception for this one because it's a film that really says a lot, and that we want to share with you. It's not a film that's meant strictly to entertain, but anyway, it was Michelle's idea to make this film, and she spent a lot of time and effort and money and other things, you know, making it happen. So, Michelle, let's start off. Why don't you just give people the basics on the film?
Well, to start, the project is something very close to my heart. In 1982, and this was part while I was studying psychology, I was also singing with a duet partner, and we got special security clearance to perform in a very highly secluded area of a VA type hospital for these people who had been injured but not debriefed, and I think it was very important. And this was how I encountered the character about who Soldier Song is about. Mm-hmm. And I always, it was interesting because at the time he said, "You'll probably write a movie about this." He even said that. So I did. But without giving the big spoiler, the purpose of making this movie was to tell the story of one soldier, to draw awareness to the huge problem of military suicide, which at the time didn't get even half the acknowledgement that it does now.
I don't even know if a tenth of the acknowledgement back then.
No,
it's only a problem I became aware of in the last few years.
Absolutely. Well, at the time, and I didn't know this until his brother came screaming at me one day saying that the death certificate actually says cause of death, heart stopped.
Oh no, I wasn't even aware of that.
So it was, and as more and more, I was going to say the problem has just grown exponentially. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to do my part in bringing awareness. So that's. I mean, I'm going to say too, if there's any specific question that you want to address, please.
Oh no, no. I just wanted you to give the audience the basics of it. So now this was about a particular soldier.
Absolutely.
Who you knew
right.
Personally.
Yeah. Name was Greg, and it was a situation where we were there setting up our equipment to perform. And believe it or not, all heck had broken loose in this area because nobody from the psychiatric department had talked to this one soldier that day and filled out the required paperwork. Mm-hmm. And the head of the department was gone, and all the little underlings were gone, and they were freaking out until somebody said, "Hey, I think that girl who's in here to sing, I think she's a psychology student." Mm-hmm. And they actually officially put it in as they were doing this great thing to help a psychology student get some experience. Right. And they sent me into the room with the form.
Yeah.
And actually I did my best to recreate that scene in the movie, as you know, What's interesting about it, though, is I didn't know how to explain all that, and I just, made it another psychologist that they brought in because the hospital psychologist was off. I mean, there were some things, obviously, that we had to do for poetic license or to help move it along so you wouldn't have a 2-hour movie explaining one little thing.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, making a movie based on a true story is an inexact science, to say the least.
Absolutely.
Well, movies themselves are inexact sciences, but that's another aspect that is challenging. And I see that, like, because I'm working on a screenplay. It's a semi autobiographical account of my senior year of high school. And I'm making one thing that's making it easier is that it is technically fiction. Nobody's real name is being used,
Right.
and I just use different. It's there are composite characters, things like that.
Right.
I mean, to really do it in a coherent way, if it were going to be a strict autobiography, would be very hard.
Right, and actually, this particular Soldier's Song does have composite characters.
Yeah.
We talked a lot about. And this was with the actors who were going to be portraying characters as to what their character was about, and the roommate. There's a roommate in this film, and he his name is Rick Keller, and he is a composite of 3 different roommates that Greg had during the time period that I was involved in performing in that unit, and it was interesting to see a wonderful actor. I'm going to mention Scott Ganyo, who played Rick Keller, what he brought to the character.
Yeah.
And that is something that I don't think I could sit here and with words describe it in any way that would really, really cover it. I think it's one of those things you'd have to see. And really, and a little behind the scenes is that when he got cast. Now this is, you will know this too from working on independent film. Things come up.
Yeah.
And we had cast a different actor in the role. And for some reason, a few weeks right when our lead actor, Tom Sparx, wanted to get together to just kind of go over lines with him so that they had a chemistry by the time they hit the set, I get this call and he says the actor forgot that he'd been cast. So Tom put out the call and Scott Ganyo answered, but what I would say, one of the things is he asked me, he said, "What kind of a director are you?"
Yeah.
What do you mean? And he wanted to know if he was free to interpret the character, his ideas, to bring what he wanted, or if there was some kind of specific exact thing that I demanded.
Mm-hmm.
And I told him that I was in favor of anything that made the project better without changing the mood of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I just was very pleased with what he did. And I know, since you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. What he brought to that character. It's something everybody would have to see. So back to it, he was a composite. We had Dr. Kasden, who is the psychologist.
Yeah.
She's actually a composite as well.
Okay.
Of the psychiatry department people who Greg had encountered. It's just, you have to go that way. Even the role you played.
Yeah.
Because one thing, very specifically, is the real Greg had not been debriefed. And what people don't understand a lot of times, because I get questions about this all the time, is he didn't unburden any of that to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have any special insight to what he did, what his mission was, anything. And people automatically, well, what did he tell you? What did he tell? Nothing.
Yeah.
He was really very good about that, even though he was somewhat fed up.
Yeah.
He was very good about that. So I had, like a broad stroke sketch of what he probably thought everybody knew, was that it was a special unit, which at that time was 5 people.
Yeah.
And that was the basis of trying to come up with these other people, and a generalization of what happened and how he ended up where he was. I had nothing else. So that's a pretty thing for anybody who's watching this, and I'm gonna leave it open. People can email me with questions, but that's the answer. I really do not know anything else.
So, how well did you get to know Greg?
Very well, actually. I think very well. One of the things I tried to do with the movie with my character is Dr. Gilmore, who comes in to talk to him as a substitute. And literally what happened is they shoved a file in my face that day. And there was a form. And I went in, and he was completely baffled when he saw me come in, because I didn't look like the medical personnel there. Didn't have a white coat, didn't have...
Yeah.
And I went in and I introduced myself, and I said, they sent me here to talk to you, and I didn't really, and I sat down with him and I said, so what would you like to discuss? And literally, like you will see in the movie, is he started laughing at me. That's so funny. And he pointed out that that's not how you do this. He was there long enough to understand. You ask the questions on the form, fill it out, say goodbye. And I said, well, I can't do that. That's not me. I don't work here. This is just, I'll fill it, we'll check something off. But I actually got to know him on an emotional level that was, he talked about to me how he felt rather than more about facts about himself.
Okay.
I learned about his brother, who actually came in at that time. So, I said we actually switch things around a little bit in the movie to make it make a little more sense. So we learned about that, and at that point I think Greg filled me in a little bit about his brother. So I actually had very little, what I'm going to say, factual information. He wouldn't have told me where he went to college, where he went to school, anything like that. But it was mostly, so you'll see that with the movie, and I think since you're familiar with the script, you have to agree, it's based on how he felt.
So, over how long a period of time did you know Greg?
It was not too much more than a month.
Okay.
And interestingly enough, just I ended up knowing his brother past that. So. Okay. But it was, I want to say, just about a month, 6 weeks. It wasn't very long in the scheme of things.
And how long after you last saw him did he commit suicide?
Oh, that, you know what? I'm not 100% sure on that. I had actually done something that I guess if they'd known, they might not have approved there. But I'd given him. I was at Indiana University at the time, and I'd given him the phone number to call me. And I think I talked to him, within the 24-hour period, but did not get any sense that his urgency or anything was any different than any other phone call I'd had. So there really wasn't anything that struck me, even though I will say when I found out what had happened, I wasn't surprised.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, suicide is one of those things that, I mean, suicide in general, not just among soldiers, but it's one of those things that I think the people who I've called the police on a few people over the years who I believed to be suicidal, and who I believed that if I started talking about any specifics, we could be here all day talking about that, so I won't get into the specifics. But as far as I know, all of those people, are still living. One or two I'm not certain about, but the others are. And of course, some of them are, Facebook the last few years. I mean, they post these things, and, part of me is thinking that, some of these details, are not appropriate to be discussing, but at the same time, if you are suicidal, it's better to say it than not to say it. But I think, you don't ever want to assume too much. I think a lot of people who do that are looking for attention. I could be wrong, but I think,
I think it just depends on the person or personality. Yeah. And if we tried to analyze that right now, we could be here forever as well.
But so I mean, you said you weren't surprised. I mean, had he seemed depressed?
Well, that now there's the interesting thing,
Yeah.
and that's a great lead-in for one of the things about the movie that was so critical. The change in mood.
Mm-hmm.
Greg was a classical music buff. He adored classical music. There are a few times I went, and you go in there, and the image that I have is that, and what I know after the fact is his brother had sneaked in some Chinese food,
Oh, okay.
and he had chopsticks.
Mhm.
And I walked into that room one evening, and his wheelchair was back facing me, and he had the classical music blaring on like the boombox,
Yeah.
and he had a chopstick,
Yeah.
and he was conducting. Just, very, very into the classical music. And at some point, he was always, they say he was always, and at some point he just stopped listening to music altogether.
Okay.
And that was because he just wasn't in the mood
Mm-hmm.
to listen to it and be involved. And that, some people might not even take as a sign, but especially looking back, that was a real mood difference. And that's something we, and I'm saying, as you know, we worked very hard to capture in Soldier's Song. And I have to say this, that, and you know this, anybody who works on any film understands that somehow through the film you have to explain what's going on. And if all of a sudden, and especially since, it's a half an hour and you have to tell a greater amount of time in this condensed time frame. So there weren't as many opportunities to see Greg conducting.
Yeah.
And we've done that, but there, it wasn't a thing where you'd see it so many times that if all of a sudden you didn't see it, it wouldn't seem odd.
Mm-hmm.
And other than the roommate having an extra line of, gee, you haven't listened to music lately, it didn't fit for me.
Okay.
And so I was trying to think what to do, and all of a sudden it hit me, I've got an idea. What if he starts listening to very dark, depressing music
Oh, yeah.
to fit the mood he's gone to?
Yeah.
And then, now as it was, I already knew I was going to have a hard enough time finding the classical music I needed and whatever other music. And now I've given myself a new problem. I'm like, where am I going to find dark music? And like the invisible hammer hit me over the head. Some of you, I know you do, remember MySpace?
Yeah.
Okay. I was on MySpace, and previously, and I can't say how I got with this, there was a music project on there called Ghost Note, and the person involved with Ghost Note said, if you ever need dark music for a film, let me know. And this had been about a month before, apparently, when I was working on something funny, so it never occurred to me. And then something, that invisible hammer hit me over the head. Hey, remember? So I sent a message and I said, are you still interested in having your music in a movie? And I got the enthusiastic yes. And so I said that was the moment that I started interacting with Nick. His name's Nick Cappelletti. He is an amazing talent musically. I just have to preface that. I hope he watches this to hear me say this again. All different kinds of music, as it turns out. And he does something, I think, very unique. He like creates a character, just about gets into that character, and then that character writes the appropriate music. That's how it seemed. It's really kind of fascinating. And the first time we talked on the phone, I was explaining to him what I just said about the going from classical to dark music. And there was a pause. And he said, I can write the classical music too.
Oh, okay.
And I don't know if you'd known this. And what was just amazing about that was, it's that moment, because I'm on the phone. And what he hears is, oh really, isn't that nice? Or whatever I said. What he didn't see was me going, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Because now I knew I didn't have to worry about that either. And that's even like sound unheard. I was just like ecstatic. And the particular effect that I'd wanted with the dark music was something that would get into your head and not leave. Because as far as Greg, he's feeling depressed, so he's listening to this depressing song, and it's making him more depressed, because it doesn't leave his head, it's making him more depressed. And I got a copy of the Ghost Note CD, And I thought, well, the best way to do this, I put it into the CD player in my car and went on my errands to see what affected me. And at the time I was walking through Wild Oats and I'm humming a song in my head. I'm like, what is that? What is it? Because I knew whatever that song was that I couldn't get out of my head, that was the one. And that was the one we used, Death's Lullaby. And of course, and Nick also did the classical. So when you get Soldier Song, you'll see the it'll say Death Lullaby by Ghost Note, but it is the same person. So who did the other? There's the little side. But the music was so important there is to show the comparable shift. And I think it was effective, and the song worked like it was meant for that scene, that this one particular scene it was in. But to this day, I don't know about anybody. If I've been at a screening, I walk out humming it. I can't get it out of my head, and it is very dark. And I was going to leave it open. As a musician yourself, I know you had anything to say about the music.
No, I mean, I wasn't going to specifically mention it, although, yeah, I didn't. I knew that Nick had done that that dark, heavy rock piece that's sort of near in the film near the time of the suicide. I didn't know he did the classical piece too, so that's
he did the two classical pieces, and actually that beginning, because in the there's an opening scene in the day room, and he's playing a song on the guitar that was one he'd written. And he isn't. You can see who he is. I gave him first crack at it when I met him. I said, "There's going to be a soldier who's playing this." I explained the scene. I said, I'm offering you the opportunity to do it, and people can see who you are with the music, and then somebody else wouldn't have to learn his song.
Right, yeah.
And he did accept, and so we had him on the set, and that brought you along, actually.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I drove up to Logansport, Indiana, where the movie was filmed. That's about an hour north of Indianapolis. Here, it's a town of population around 20,000. Typical small town Indiana. And I mean, there's literally dozens of towns that, pretty well interchangeable with Logansport. There's actually a piece of trivia, some of you might remember that the sitcom One Day at a Time was supposedly in Indianapolis, and there was an episode in which somebody talked about Logansport, and whoever wrote the series wasn't very geographically sound when it came to Indiana, because I've never seen the episode, but I read that Logansport's actually described as being south. Yeah,
right.
And which, of course, it's actually about an hour north on, I think it's
421.
421, yeah. So I drove up there, and I drove Nick to the Indianapolis airport on a Sunday afternoon in March of 2009, and that was only the second time I'd ever been on the film set. The first time was for my brother's Trail of Crumbs 3 years earlier, and I have a bit part in that film that got deleted. So not only was Soldier Song my first first speaking role, is also my first role that didn't get deleted. And by the way, my brother, when he told me that my scene didn't make Trail of Crumbs, he sent me this really long explanation as if he felt the need to justify it, like thought I was going to be mad at him. I wasn't. I understood, but it was a subjective call, and he decided the movie worked better without the scene than with it. So I understood, and but anyway, though, yeah, I talked to Nick. He and I had a very good conversation about music and film on the way back to the
Which
airport.
I was trying to figure out, because for an over 2-hour drive, I thought, he's going to have a 2-hour drive, we got to have somebody who's going to have something in common with him.
Yeah.
And so I said,
and
Lec had put out, put out a CD, so I figured that was.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and I actually, by that time, I started doing screenplays in 2005, and then it was really 2007 I decided I really wanted to get full-fledged into the film industry, and I had been trying, and so then to me, just a chance to be on the film set and observe Soldier Song, I welcomed it, and it ended up being a great education, and I, of course, already knew Michelle since 1997, but
well, and in fact, too, you had been cast in a different role
Yes.
You were going to be you were in the flashback.
Yeah,
you were going to be the father.
But that was later though. That was not till June when that was filmed. This was March when I was there to pick up
to drive,
Nick.
right?
Well, yeah, I got there on a Saturday. I actually spent the night. I slept on a recliner there in Magic House Studios there in Logansport.
Yeah, that's what everybody did.
Yeah.
And
it's very very comfortable. It's a nice place, it's for what it is, and
the filming ended up divided up into these two separate shoot dates.
In March and June. Yeah.
In June we did the pickup scenes, and one involved the flashbacks.
Yeah.
And Lec was supposed to. We'd had him cast in one role, but he got lost.
It was.
So we pulled. So this is typical indie film too. We just pulled somebody off the crew and put him in the and we needed people, and that was a thing too, because we needed people in the uniforms. And that was another thing, because I'd written it so that the whole team of 5 people had been there, and we were only able to come up with, aside from Greg in that flashback, 2 other actors, you and Stephen Porter.
Okay.
And so I just rewrote it, and I gave the government official, Louie Lawless, a great character actor.
Yeah, he is.
I'm going to tell you, it was one of those things where he put on the suit and the tie, and if you hadn't known what role he was supposed to play, you would have known government official talking head.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he looked it, and we gave him some clueless line. Which is, he sees he's looking at 3, and he's telling them that they need to stay there and complete the assignment.
Yeah.
And he gets the look, and he goes, "Didn't there used to be 5 of you boys?"
Yeah.
And I thought that was very typical government.
Yeah.
That did.
Yeah, it's one thing, when you deal with bureaucrats. I mean, you have, really 3 types of people. There's the rude, arrogant jerks, and the people who are well-intentioned but are stuck within the system, and then the people who are just
clueless.
Louie's character is definitely in the latter category.
Absolutely. And just so you know too, I think from my conversations with Greg, the indication was just what, like I said, what was in the file, which was how he got there. He would reiterate that they'd gone to clean up landmines.
Yeah.
They got captured, even though they weren't there, they weren't armed. It was really terrible. They got captured. They remained captured for many years. They were finally released, and the bureaucrat told them, "Go back out and finish."
Yeah.
And by that time, I don't know if a map had, we don't even know how it happened, but the mine went off, and he ended up paralyzed. Now, one of the things, and we're out of order, and we're kind of all around this.
Yeah. I should have brought some notes for this, but yeah, we were...
No, and I think, because I want to make sure certain things get mentioned, because it's obviously, I'm not worried about giving them plot by plot. They'll, I'm hoping you will watch it and see it, and we will tell you how you can get a free copy at the end of this.
So we're not in this to make money. This isn't shameless self-promotion. This is promoting a cause. We promise.
Absolutely. One of the things is I find, and we've discussed that people misunderstand why Greg actually took his life. What happened, this is something very important, because everybody has their own story. And he was paralyzed, and he was having a lot of pain in the part of his body that he could feel.
Yes.
And the pain was getting worse. The pain relievers were not working.
Yeah.
And they kept changing it on him. And in my mind, because one of the things he said to me was, well, sure, if I take enough of them, I'll pass out and I won't feel anything. But he didn't want to pass out. He didn't want to be a zombie. He didn't, as he put it, and he didn't want to just sleep through life. And he was dealing with it until he finally got to see his brother, and his brother reacted to seeing him paralyzed and in pain. And it bothered his brother so much. Greg couldn't handle that.
Mm-hmm.
And Scott Ganyo, whom I mentioned before, talks about altered perceptions when he wrote the tagline for the movie. And I think it's true because Greg really believed he was helping Dan. He was taking his own life to put Dan out of his misery.
Yeah,
And it was all really very, I mean, it was meant to be selfless.
Yeah.
And in the movie, you see where he's got a couple letters he scrawls out.
Yeah.
What I know from reality, what's interesting when you watch that part, and you'll have to understand, apparently Greg spent a couple weeks working on 2 letters, and he had given Dan a 14-page letter, and I got a shorter one, basically reviewing some of the stuff, make sure Dan knows that, it's not his fault.
Right.
But, certain things. And I remember Dan saying to me, he thought he was helping me by doing this, he was wrong.
Oh, right, yeah, and I think that's the case with a lot of people who commit suicide. I think it's, it's like just 2 or 3 years ago, Bob Welch, former guitarist for Fleetwood Mac, shot himself to death, and he was dying. He had some kind of, terminal illness, and he left behind a note said he didn't want his wife to have to care for an invalid. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure his wife would have been glad to do it,
Mm-hmm.
But I think sometimes people. So one thing I know, I've been lucky. I have not had a lot of struggles with illnesses and injuries, but I have heard that it can cause depression.
Right.
And I mean, like another example, like Ray Combs, who hosted the game show Family Feud in the late 80s and early 90s, he committed suicide in 96. 2 years before that, he had been seriously injured in a car accident. And apparently he already had, some struggles with depression before that, but apparently after the accident he was just living in constant pain, and, it caused depression to get even much worse, and to the point that, he hanged himself to death, and...
Yeah.
And making it even more chilling, it was on his estranged wife's birthday, but...
Yeah.
But anyway, aside from that, it is a source of depression, and it's one thing that I really, didn't think about until the last presidential election campaign, when that was really at that time when I was starting to become a lot more conscious about, our interventionist foreign policy, and how, these wars. And you have to be very careful about saying this, because it's so easy to misinterpret as being disrespectful to our soldiers or being un-American. But, so many times, we hear our soldiers, hailed as being fighting for our freedom. And no matter how well-intentioned and honorable some of our soldiers are, these wars, you and I know, are not about our freedom. They're about some special interest, and I don't want to. I don't want to get overly partisan.
Right,
please.
And we don't want to get political.
And this is not an overly political movie, by the way. I mean, there's nothing about Democrats or Republicans in this movie.
And I think one of the reasons to draw awareness to the problem, I picked something that wasn't current. Mm. This was something, post Vietnam era. So there, I'm trying not to draw lines on this. What I really want is whether this is really important to understand. Yeah. Whether you have your view on this, mine, or think that we are righteous in doing this. All right. Whatever your stand on our foreign policy, our war policy, whatever, I think we should all come together and agree that the problem of military suicide is that. It is a problem.
It is.
And there needs to be, part of the cost of war, it should be providing care.
Yes.
And addressing this, and be willing to recognize that this is a problem, because if there is no recognition that it's a problem, it's easy to sweep under the rug or ignore. And I think there are groups out there, Stop Soldier Suicide is one, and so I understand they're aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
I want this movie to make people feel like it could happen. It's familiar. It can happen to somebody I know or love.
Yes.
And it is happening.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. And I mean, so please, maybe that's a warning we should have given at the beginning. This is our position on this for these soldiers that, I say in the time it takes to watch Soldier Song, one soldier has committed suicide. So it is a huge problem. And this is my way of trying to do my part, and I hope that it does have an effect on that.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
mostly impassionedly.
And then for me, again, without getting partisan, I think partisanship is one of the worst things that happens on subjects like these, because it creates this false dichotomy that polarizes people to think that one side is always right and the other side is always wrong. But one thing I hope for the people to watch this is to see that this happens. And I obviously want us to unite, like you said, about being aware of this problem of soldier suicide and doing whatever we can to stop it. Besides that, I also believe that an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and I also hope that people who watch this movie will consider, before we go off to war the next time or continue, the wars that are currently going on, we should ask ourselves, is the supposed mission, worth putting our soldiers, our young men, at risk for this? And, most of the time, my answer is no.
And again, even if I'm hoping you don't say, yes, it's worth that. I mean, but it is a major problem. It was a problem in '82. It was a problem in the '70s. It's been a problem as long as there's been war. They've called it different things.
Yeah.
And I don't have the list with me of what they used to call all the, to make it, shell shocked and all kinds of things. And now they're finally getting to the point where they're calling it what it is.
Oh yeah.
But I think a lot of people aren't aware.
And some of these, you alluded to these painkillers that Greg was on. I mean, a lot of these painkillers are horribly addictive. They're very debilitating, and again, at the risk of getting political, a lot of these drugs that our soldiers are given, and not just soldiers, but people who are in hospitals for other, afflictions, illnesses, or whatever. A lot of times the drugs that they're given are more dangerous and more addictive than a lot of the illegal drugs, the so-called recreational drugs.
Right, absolutely. And I think that was another thing that definitely affected Greg, though, was whatever the drugs were doing to his mind, too. There were all these things that went into play with this. One of the things I'm doing a little bit of analysis here, rather than just commentary. I used a technique with this. I have a double flashback in this film. So far, I have not had anybody get confused. It was set up pretty well where you could see that it was flashing back.
Yeah.
And you've seen it. You were in it. Is that obvious that it was you flashed back twice? I mean,
I was never confused by anything in the movie.
Yeah. So, second opinion.
Yeah.
That's what I'm gonna say. So, that's a little bit on the technique there. We do start out. It's a funeral. You can tell it's a soldier funeral or some kind because we have a flag draped coffin.
Yeah.
This is the shout. The rabbi is doing mourner's Kaddish. That is my father. That's a little thing. My father, Elliott Gussow, playing the rabbi. I should say, Elliott, do you have a role in this movie for me, Gussow? And okay.
So you said that. What did you say that he was reciting?
It's called the mourner's Kaddish. It's a Jewish prayer, and it's not. I want to say for anybody who isn't familiar, it's not like a mourner's. it's not a prayer of mourning.
Yeah.
It is a Kaddish, and calling it the mourner's Kaddish refers to who's saying it rather than what. So in Jewish service, if you were to open the prayer book, you would see where it would say Reader's Kaddish.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same Kaddish as the mourner's Kaddish.
Okay.
Or it's whoever, so it has to do with who's saying it rather than what the content is.
Yeah.
And so he's chanting the mourner's Kaddish. And in the cemetery, John Raycop and Rivka Rose playing the deceased parents, and actually it's father and stepmother.
Yeah.
And his brother, and then the roommate that I talked about. They're in there, and we flash back once to the day room, and then we change point of view and see Greg with his head on the table. And you kind of get into his head, and it's his recent life, some early and then recent life, flashing before his eyes, so that you can see what's happened that led up to him being right there. And then you come out of the two. And, so honestly, yes, I wanted to make a point. I also, to me, there was no point in making a movie if I wasn't going to show my filmmaking creativity while I was at it, though.
Right.
I mean, I could have done it. We could have done it not as artistically. But I want people to be able to see what I can do at the same time.
Oh, yeah. And
in fact, if I could hold this up, this is the thing too. We didn't go to a production house for this. We run the DVDs off ourselves. I print and package, but if they can even see it, that's the funeral scene there. I'm trying to make sure we mention everybody.
This is the belated making of that we're doing after the DVD.
Right, absolutely. But Tom Sparx played Greg. Did an excellent job of getting a feel for the character. I think he did. And on YouTube also there is a trailer you can watch for the movie.
Oh, I forgot about that.
You can look up Soldier Song trailer. The other thing is, if you put into the YouTube search is Soldier Song conducting, you will see a full scene of him conducting that was broken up, and you'll see why he did a very good job. Scott Ganyo, I mentioned, is Rick Keller. Angela Plank. In local circles, she is best known as the Citizens Gas Chef's Choice cooking host.
Oh, okay.
And she is Dr. Kasden. Michael Harris is Dr. Lange. I'm Dr. Gilmore. We mentioned Louie Lawless. Very lovely actress LaDonna Pettijohn. She was the Vietnam nurse.
Okay.
It was fantastic. Okay. Doug Bolton came on board as Dan. I believe this was his first role too. I mean, it was just, it was spectacular. What I really liked is casting Dan was actually the last role we had. And that's why I kind of saved it here. We were having trouble finding somebody to play Dan. And I'd auditioned a couple people and it just didn't feel right. I'm going to say that. And I kept telling Tom, I'll know it. When I have him, I'll know it. And Doug came out, and my auditioning technique is actually a little different than most. It's just not about reading the lines. I want to know that the actor can make me feel something. And I asked him a couple questions to get him to talk about something that he felt passionately about, or something that, happened emotionally, so I could see it. And he started talking about something he was writing. And I said, that's it right there. I said, whatever he was saying, I said, that's how Dan feels. I said, oh. And I got on the phone, and I called Tom. I said, I've got your brother. Why don't you come, let's see what you look like together. And it worked out very, very well. I mentioned Steve Porter, and I said Nick Cappelletti was the guitar player.
Yeah.
So I think but very, very good cast. We had a wonderful crew. I am going to talk about our production manager, Mark Raycop. Check him out, Fiberglass Freaks. He builds Batmobiles.
Yeah, he's Mark, he runs a production company called Magic House Studios up in Logansport, and I've seen Mark a few times over the years at different film events here in Indiana, and yeah, he definitely is. He leans more toward the superhero side of film, which is fine. I'm not putting that down. It's just not my thing particularly. But
Just an observation then.
But yeah, but he has great facility up there in Logansport. If you're ever looking for a studio to work with, and he's a nice guy. So
yeah, but also if you are mad into Batman and you've
Yes.
always wanted a Batmobile, he has been officially licensed by DC Comics, so you know what you'll be getting, quality
Yes.
on the Bat.
Oh, yeah,
Bat
yeah.
1, Bat 2. I mean, we and in fact, when we went to do the film, you'd see various Batmobiles in various stages of being made, all over the place. It was fun.
Yeah.
So, just a shout on that. Chuck Boudreau with sound. Nate Savage, director of photography. I can't remember every single name. I'm sorry.
It's on IMDb if you.
It is on IMDb. Thank you.
Oh, no problem.
Yeah, it is on IMDb.
Yeah.
So, what I want to know, any other questions that you can think of that you would like specifically answered for this?
I just first of all, just from this is from one actor to another. I'm just curious because I know I knew about the movie because of you, and I hadn't discovered all the acting websites at that time. How did you go about casting this film? You mentioned for a few people, but in general, though.
Well, I knew Tom. I'd known Tom. I'd
Yes.
actually been his acting manager for a while at that point. And I had met Scott Ganyo before, actually, on the set of Star Trek vs. Batman.
Yes.
That was an interesting film. That's another one to check out.
Yeah.
But when we had to put out that emergency call for Rick Keller, he contacted me. We actually did put out casting notice. Some of them we did. Some of them I just went searching on actors' sites, especially for Dan. I was looking for anybody who fit the physical description, age-wise.
Yeah.
And just reaching out to people. We knew Angela Plank from my brother-in-law's church, First Mennonite, and she had performed for us with the Indie Artists Peace Project, singing. So we knew her, and it was just really a matter of due diligence, perhaps, and making sure we found the right people and had good. And I have to say this: my thing is never let them see you act. To me, these people, you have to believe. If I don't believe you as the character, you're not in it. No, and we were mentioning Louie. Actually, I found him on one of the sites. I was looking for anybody who I thought looked like a bureaucrat.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's good. Yeah.
That was one thing. Now, LaDonna Pettijohn came to audition for Dr. Kasden, and she read well. I'm not. I'm just going to say that later Angela came and was like everything I'd ever pictured. But we put LaDonna in the other role, and it worked out beautifully. I mean, one of the things too, a lot of times, sometimes just the look of something, and there's a scene in the Vietnam hospital where she's leaning over Greg, and something about the lighting and the mood and her profile, everything just seems to fit what that scene is supposed to be. I mean, it was, we watched it on the monitor. It was just amazing. And of course, we had I should say too, we do need to acknowledge and thank our various and sundry extras who, sat in the day room, and our two orderlies.
Yeah.
And our Elvis soldier. By the way, if you go on eBay, we are auctioning off the Elvis soldier robe. It has been signed by the majority of the cast
Including
and crew.
me.
Including the guy who wore it. I know that's and we're also another item from the wardrobe. It didn't actually get on one of the soldiers because it didn't fit, but it's an item from the wardrobe, and another item, and a free copy. So I've got that on eBay. So take a look at that. If you go there and don't see it, you'll have to know it's been bought, because we don't know how long this thing will be up. I mean, this will be up longer than hopefully that. We are going to talk about. Our goal is to get this film into people's hands, and not just into people's hands, but into people's DVD players.
Into people's hearts.
That too. Well, it'll get into their hearts only if it gets into their DVD players.
Yes.
The reason I say it that way is we are more than willing to provide a free copy to anybody who wants one and promises they'll watch it.
Yes.
That it won't end up in the pile of things they never get to. So get it in your DVD players. I think it will touch your heart if you actually step up and watch it. Way to do that, we are at Facebook, and it's www.facebook.com/soldiersongmovie. And you can contact me through that website. Just tell me you're writing for the free copy of Soldier Song. And like I said, we want to get it into hands. View it alone. Invite your family, invite your friends. I did have someone who got it, and they screened it at her Elks Club.
Oh, good.
Do that. If you are interested at all in setting up a screening or you're inviting people, let us know. We'll post about it. That's the thing. This is about getting it out there, getting people thinking about this.
Yes, I think that's great, and definitely, show it to everybody who's willing to watch, and have parties, show it right before your Super Bowl party next year, or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing, and I say this again, it's not about self-promotion, but this is something that I get asked. Are you willing to sign it? Yes. If you want a signed copy, let us know. Let us know in your email. And Lec and I will be happy to sign it. It's a little difficult to get everybody else together, but that is all fine. But we want this out there. It'll be sent priority mail. And for you.
So another thing is the film on the internet anywhere to view, or
not yet? We are working on that. But right now, no. So
Okay.
this is the way to get it.
Yeah.
If and I'm going to say this: if you want any information on any of the actors, and certainly you can go to IMDb.
Yeah.
Look some of them up. Many of them have Facebook pages. You can check out Fiberglass Freaks on Facebook. Any of the people that we've mentioned, for the most part, are on Facebook. So, if you're interested in the actors, if you want to, and I'm sure any of them too would still be more than happy to answer any questions about their involvement in the film. You can check out Nick Cappelletti's latest project, Salamander Lounge. His character's King Salamander. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Go check that out. And that's as of September 30th, 2015. A year from now, it's going to be something different. He's had a lot, but so that's how you can get your copy. Anything else? Obviously we didn't want to talk about all the details in the film. I want something different for them to watch, but mostly has been about why we made it. Some of the behind the scenes stuff. Now I can ask you, what did you walk away from Soldier Song with in your head and heart, if anything?
Oh, I'm glad you asked. I just look at it as a very, very realistic human story. That it made its point strongly, and you saw that even though Greg came from a loving family, obviously he was overwhelmed by not only his injury, but the aftermath of it. And it should be noted that as tragic as his injury was, and like I said, I hope people will reevaluate after seeing this movie and knowing this about this rampant problem of these maiming injuries and suicides, that people be reevaluating whether we should send our soldiers, our young men, off to war so casually. But aside from that, there are people who suffer devastating injuries and still go on to have happy, productive lives.
Right, and
I think maybe if Greg and others got better, more compassionate care, rather than just slipping them some painkillers and going through their, going through the motions with their, whatever,
therapy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then I think a lot of these soldiers would have a much better chance,
Right. And keep in mind, we were talking about the loving family.
Yeah.
It was, like I said, and all I can say is from a 7-page letter, which in some ways I wish I'd saved to have when we did the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But back in '82, Dan asked me if he could have the letter Greg had written me, and I gave it to him without even thinking.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially, it was that love, even if misguided, that had him do that, because he really, it was all about, I can't see Dan hurt like this, and
right.
I'm the reason Dan is hurting, and he removed the wrong problem.
Yeah, exactly. That's the best way to put it. And so yeah, I walked away thinking, like I said, that it was a great, a very strong portrayal of a man's injury and the aftermath, and someone with a good family, had a close relationship with his brother, and it was just a very honest, uncompromising film. It was obviously done very modestly. We did not have a big budget. We didn't have any stars in it, but it was made with a lot of heart, and it was something that it was a dream that you wouldn't let die. I mean, that you kept on fighting, for years to get it done.
Thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. And this time, I just want to give a few personal thoughts as I reflect back on Soldier Song. It's been 4 years since the movie was first released, 6 years since it was filmed, and I'll try to not go into too many unnecessary details, which is contrary to my nature. But anyway, I basically that. Soldier Song is a very emotional movie, and it took the filming of my scene took place on a very emotional weekend for me. I'd been up there in March, which was my first job on the film, was where I was as the driver, where I took Nick Cappelletti back to the airport after I arrived Saturday afternoon, left Sunday afternoon. I observed many hours of filming and made a lot of friends, and every time I'm on a film set, I strive to get to know the cast and crew, and which sometimes has come in handy. Sometimes it's gotten me roles, or enabled me to refer people for roles later. So I always tell people, when you're in film, you've got to reach out, build bridges. That goes back to Soldier Song. I made a lot of friends on that set who I'm still in touch with and still sometimes work with to this day. And networking is extremely important in film. But aside from that, so I took Nick back to the airport. We were together about an hour and a half, just me and him, and we had a great conversation. But then, anyway, at that time, it had only been 2 years since my album was released, and I still was trying to juggle music and film. And on June 11th, which was a Thursday, I had a concert performance scheduled in Madison, Indiana, my hometown, as part of its 200th birthday celebration. And 4 days prior to that, my hired lead singer just casually told me he couldn't do the show because he didn't have time. He didn't get sick, didn't have an injury. His son wasn't in the hospital. He just decided he didn't have time to do it. And I tried to find a replacement singer, and obviously didn't succeed. Not surprisingly, at least. And so I lost out on that gig, and it's something that it's devastating to me to this day. and the singer, by the way, and I have not reconciled to any level. It's something I'm still very, very bitter about. He's never accepted any responsibility for any wrongdoing there, and I doubt he ever will. And it's so it's something that it's a regret I'll take to my grave. That I missed out on that opportunity. But then the next day, Friday, when I got lost in the boondocks trying to find this production house, I was just so distressed and embarrassed, and I was just thinking about what an awful week I'd have. I already had I missed the gig the day before, and now
and he was ready to turn around, just say forget it, and I said, well, come anyway, will you? And I even said, we'll use you. If you can get here, we'll use you tomorrow.
Yeah, and and Michelle was forgiving, and not everybody would have been, but she was, and we have an 18-year friendship now, so I'm glad it's endured a couple of bumps like that. But to have those two things happen in the same week, I was just shaking my head, thinking this is not my week, And then the next day on Sunday, or excuse me, on Saturday, June the 13th, a lucky 13. It's Saturday the 13th for me. I was in my soldier gear, and it's the first time I ever got specially dressed up for a role, because I'd been, like I said, I'd had a bit part, a non-speaking part that got cut out of Trail of Crumbs, and then Michelle came to me about. It was the shoot for this scene is still supposed to start at 1. It was about 12:40. Michelle came to me and asked if I would do a speaking part because somebody didn't show up, and I'd really wanted to do a speaking part. So she told me all I had to be was passable. So
Did I say that?
Yes, you did. Yes, you did. And she gave me the script, which I believe was a newly written. I believe the dialogue was newly written.
Right, because remember, we'd had 5 people in the scene, and now we were down to 3.
Yeah, you worked around that really well, though.
Thank you.
But so anyway, and they were very easy lines. It wasn't hard to memorize. Although I always remember, I was talking about how Rock Hudson, his first movie, all he had to say was, "Yes, could you get a bigger blackboard?" And it took him 38 times to get it right. Because he was a notoriously poor memorizer, but that was the Fighter Squadron, by the way, from 1948 with Robert Stack. But so anyway, I always believed from the time I decided to pursue a career in film, I believed I had the potential to be a good actor, but it's one of those things when you've never done it before, you don't know how you're going to do. So anyway, it was me and Steve Porter and Louie, and who was Tom, okay, yeah, Tom, yeah. And it was a scene that I got a little bit of a sunburn. It wasn't extremely hot. It was about 85 degrees, but it was sunny.
Yeah.
And I was, I had military gear on, so it felt hotter. And I didn't have in the movie Trekkin', I got a really bad burn. But this one, I just got my. Because I've got that Swedish pale complexion, so I burn very easily. But
yeah, he got sunburned and bitten by the film bug all at the same time.
Yeah, but no, I didn't get a terrible sunburn, but just a little bit, and it took about 3.5 hours to shoot, and which is typical for a 30 or 60-second scene, as this was.
Well, and actually, that is something that, to bring up memory from the set, that was outside.
Yes.
So we had a lot of hold for traffic.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because Magic House.
It's on a main road.
It's like on the end of a commercial district. Although behind the studio, it's more of a, I don't remember what's behind it. Is it a residential area
I don't even know.
I mean, there aren't. I don't remember there being any stores or restaurants on the other side. But on the front of there, it's the end of a commercial district. Right. So. But yeah, there weren't a ton of cars, but there were enough that it caused a hassle.
Right, we had to hold. So that's why So in case somebody's wondering why it really took that long, there was a lot of outdoor noise to contend.
But besides that, I mean, for a 60-second scene,
right.
Average time's probably 3 or 4 hours. People who don't work in film are amazed to know that, but it is. There are just so many so many angles, so many. I mean, and it varies. Sometimes it's shorter than
And they
that.
gave you a
sometimes
lot
it's
of
longer.
challenges on that too, because I remember to kind of give something to the scene.
Yeah.
They asked you if you were willing to hold a lit cigarette.
I was going to mention that for
Yeah.
next, and I've never smoked, so I didn't even know how to hold it properly, And I had to ask somebody. There's this lady on the set.
Kate Chaplin. She was that day. I mean, she was doing script supervisor and some other things. She was an assistant director, and she actually lit the cigarette for you.
Was she the one who kept on handing? Because we went through 3 or 4 cigarettes.
Right. That was her.
Yeah, okay. Because I just worked with her a few weeks ago on Wigged Out, which is a feature film made up in Noblesville suburb here, which has one of the guys from Family Ties in it.
Mark Price.
Okay, yeah.
Skippy.
Yeah. And so, and she and my daughter Arya Kelly, who's also an actress, she and I are cast in another thing that Kate's doing, but we haven't,
Okay.
that hasn't filmed yet.
But so she was lighting the cigarettes for you because he didn't smoke.
Yeah.
And say, okay, hold it like this.
Yeah. So I mean, basically, we went through I'd say 3 or 4 lit cigarettes throughout the course of the afternoon, and by the way, cigarettes. I've heard I think I heard cigarettes and food are the 2 biggest sources of continuity errors in films.
Yeah.
I haven't checked to see if there's any inconsistencies in the length of my cigarette as the scene goes on, but anyway, though, so I did that, and I remember Tom actually asked me if I would object, if I was willing to do it, like he thought maybe I'd be offended by doing it. No, I wouldn't. I mean, the way I look at it, I do a lot of things in film that I would never do in real life,
Right.
and I don't view it that way. So I had no problem holding a cigarette. I would have had no problem, with a fake cigarette pretending to smoke it, but I delivered my lines, and I never looked around, or heard anybody snickering, so I guess I didn't do too badly, and so that was my first speaking role, second role overall, and now I've acted in 55 films. So when I look back at Soldier Song, amazingly, it's 53 films ago, and my memory is just so vivid of that whole weekend there, up at Magic House and on the set, and really that scene, that day on the set when I saw that I could act, I could do a speaking part, that redeemed my week, Yes, I still had the heartbreak about the, losing my bicentennial gig in Madison, but it's interesting, though, that I just delved so much into film after that. Like I said, I've done 53, acted in 53 films since then, and I haven't recorded another album yet, and I don't know if that's just mere coincidence, or maybe that first time, doing a real role on camera where I actually spoke, actually, thrust me in that direction, but,
Right.
But it did give me confidence. That's when, it's not that I believed I'd given a great performance, but the fact that, having never tried it before, that I was able to get by,
Right.
and to what you and Tom considered to be acceptable, and nobody seemed to think it was terrible, at least,
Right, exactly.
and
Of course. Well, what's the joke? At that time, we couldn't be too picky. No.
Yeah.
But and I remember somebody asked me. Now, I will tell you that the reason I actually cast myself in it was my brother-in-law, my biggest supporter, local poet and part of the Indie Artist Peace Project with me, was on to me for a long time. When are you going to put yourself in something?
Yeah.
So, okay, fine. And so I put myself in the role that was familiar to me from somewhat having that real role in life for Greg. So
yeah,
it was, and it was an experience for me too, directing myself.
Yeah, and a lot of and that's really one thing we didn't really get into in the Rocky films, that Stallone directed himself in 2, 3, 4, and 6. And we never even got into that aspect of it.
Right.
But I remember the scene that that you're in. I remember we shot that the Saturday that I got there in March.
Right.
And it was might have been the scene that was shooting when I first got there. I'm not sure, or maybe it was done later that day. I don't remember exactly which scene was going on when I first arrived, but yeah, I remember. I was pleasantly surprised because I wasn't even aware that you were going to be in the film on camera. So yeah. But yeah, I thought you came across it very naturally. So
Thank you.
You're welcome. And so obviously, if you choose to pursue film further, then I think you could have a future in that. And I know I'll find something for you to do in the '80s Metal Star pilot that I'm working on. But so anyway, yeah, I got through that, and so basically my week was no longer a washout.
I'm so glad.
Yeah, me too. And it was nearly a year and a half. It was November of 2010 before I got another speaking role after that. But it was that time on Soldier Song that made me believe I could do it. And I've just grown from there, and and I started practicing a lot on my acting, and to this day, every day I practice. I pick my favorite scenes from movies and TV and try to do them. Stuff that I think is challenging. And that's what I encourage all actors to do, practice every day. Whether you got a film project going on or not. But I look back now, and from the time I went into acting, I was determined, to always remain gracious and humble, no matter how big or how popular or successful I might become. And, like I said, I've met celebrities who are the nicest people in the world. I've met celebrities who were, just total jerks. And there's no relation, by the way, between a celebrity's popularity and how nice they are. I mean, there are people who are like minor celebrities who are jerks, and,
Yes.
major celebrities who are great people. So it really it depends on the person, but I think one reason I think that the two main reasons I've been able to remain gracious and humble, and granted I'm not a star by any means, not even close to it, but even with the roles I've gotten in the bigger productions that I've been on TV now with How to Survive the End of the World, there are two things that I think keep me level-headed. One is when people are jerks to me, I try to never be jerks to others. When somebody specifically does something bad to me, I try to never specifically do that to anybody else. But then on top of that, one thing that I've learned over the years, and I first observed it with you, and to a lesser extent with my brother and his then girlfriend Molly Leland on Trail of Crumbs, but especially with you because my brother lives out near Los Angeles. I don't see him very often. Or really talk to him as much as I should. But, with you, obviously, you and I really, even though we met back at that Electric Light Orchestra Part 2 concert back in 1997, it really wasn't until about 07, 08 that we really started to be in touch on a regular basis when I was wanting to be in film and I found out that you were involved in it. And and in fact, it was, had I not stayed in touch with Jeff, her brother-in-law, after that Electric Light Orchestra Part 2 concert, I don't know that I would have stayed in touch with you, So, that's another good reason I'm glad I stayed in touch with Jeff, even though I haven't had a lot of contact with him. I've had far more contact with you than with him in the last several years, but although I certainly still regard him as a friend. But what I learned, especially from you, and then what I've seen from people, the subsequent 53 films I've worked on, and hopefully many more to come, is that every film is someone's dream. And when I, as an actor, am entrusted by the filmmaker or filmmakers to be part of making that dream come to life, it's a tremendous honor and an equally tremendous responsibility, and it's something I never want to take for granted. That's why I always want to go there and help that filmmaker achieve his or her dream, and just like I hope, like with my 80s Metal Star pilot that's now in production, I want the people who act in that and who work on that in any capacity to treat it the same way as my dream, and so I knew how important it was to you, and that's why I was so distressed and embarrassed by getting lost on Friday on the way to the studio, and why I was so thankful to have a chance to redeem myself, as well as discover that I could do a speaking part. Because had I, and it shows, things work out for the best sometimes. I mean, had I shown up on Friday, in time for that shoot, I was not going to have a speaking part. And
right.
so who knows how my career might have turned out. Maybe I wouldn't have gotten the confidence then, and maybe I wouldn't have gotten that role in Creeporia, and then all the subsequent roles after that, without that speaking part. So, it's, I don't know if it was meant to be, but certainly it worked out,
Right. So I think we had to go once again, www.facebook.com/soldierssongmovie.
Yeah.
If you want to contact us to get your complimentary copy.
Yeah.
That you're, one other thing I should mention too, because if you are able to and so desire to, you can go find out how you can help us continue putting copies in people's hands. You can make a gift specifically, and if you do that through PayPal, 100% of it goes for the postage to send these. Nobody at the production company or anything makes any money, any profit off of it. So you can get a free copy. You can pay it forward. Same website.
Okay. Well, and I wish. I mean, I don't know how to upload DVDs to YouTube. Obviously, some people do, but if anybody could do that, would you? Would that be okay?
No, that would be great too.
Okay. Yeah.
But don't do it without letting me know first.
Yeah. And
that you're going to do it, because we don't want 20 different people who have nothing to do with the production doing it.
Yeah, we want the film to get seen,
Right.
We want the message to be heeded, but yeah, we just want to make sure that everything is above board.
All right.
So, did you have any last words?
No.
Okay. Well, I just want to say one thing, one more thing, to you, Michelle, in regard to what I said. I'm thankful and honored that you made me, that you entrusted me to be a small part of helping, your dream become reality. And so that's something I'll always be thankful for, no matter how many more films I have the honor of being in, that's something that I'll always look back on with great memories. My 2 weekends that I had there on the set, and sleeping there on the recliner in the main room there at Magic House, and everything else that we all endured, and all the struggles to get the thing made and get it released and shown to people. So it's a tremendous honor that not only will I always be thankful for, but that I view as a pivotal moment of my career, and who knows where I would be without it. It's something that really planted a seed and helped me grow as an actor, and who knows where either of us will go from here. But it was a great start that I look back on, and that I'm proud of, and that I want everybody else to to view and to experience and to share.
Well, thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure.
And also thank you for deviating from the usual super deep movie analysis to do this special episode on Soldier Song.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So, all right, are you said everything you need to say?
Mm-hmm. I believe so.
Okay. All right. Well, this concludes our episode 10. We'll be back in a few days with our supplement on the 2 trailers for the upcoming movie Creed, starring Sylvester Stallone as Rocky Balboa and Michael B. Jordan as Apollo Creed's son. And then obviously plenty more episodes on a wide variety of movies coming over the next few months. I actually have a lot that are on the back burner that I would have done already had it not been for this deviation for the Rocky series. But anyway, we thank you for joining us, and we appreciate you being so gracious as to let us talk about this film that we were a part of, and hope you understand that it was not for any self-promotion or self-exaltation. This is about promoting a cause and a film that doesn't entertain as much as it enriches, which is my favorite kind of film. So thank you for joining us, and hope to see you again in a few days for our supplemental episode on the Creed trailers, and then shortly after that for episode 11 for movie yet to be determined. Till next time for Super Deep Movie Analysis, this is Lec Zorn and Michelle Gussow. Good night.